From Thom Hartmann's Daily Take Substack. Did Denmark find the answer to immigration, while Trump chose barbarism instead? How a small nation's pragmatic, humane approach exposes the lie behind America's manufactured, quote, crisis, end quote, and offers a roadmap for defeating the racist strongman weaponizing immigration for power. Published November 25th, 2025. The following is a song inspired by this article.
Razor wire in the sunrise, shadow waiting at the gate. Families walk from fire only to meet another state. Little hands on chain link fences, tired eyes that plead for grace. A journey made for freedom ends in fear they shouldn't face. 'Cause the cruelty ain't a bug, it's the whole damn plan. Turning hope into a weapon in the heart of this land. But we can guard our borders without losing dignity. We can choose the road of mercy over cold strategy. Still boots in the dust, their orders barked without a name. Politicians build their power by fanning hate and blame. But justice ain't the violence some men sell as low and true. A nation built by dreamers can't survive on broken youth. No, the cruelty saying fear your neighbor's footsteps just to keep their power pin. But the world has seen another way, where law meets humanity, where you welcome those in need without surrendering security. Every setting sun remembers what the daylight tries to hide. A country's soul is measured by the ones left outside. 'Cause the cruelty ain't a bug, it's the strategy they choose. But there's a kinder, stronger miracle we ain't afraid to use. And the light keeps rising up in every voice they tried to bruise. We can guard this land with courage and protect the ones who lose.
Razor wire in the sunrise, shadows waiting at the gate. Families walk from fire only to meet another state. Little hands on chain-linked fences, tired eyes that plead for grace. A journey made for freedom ends in fear they shouldn't face. 'Cause cruelty ain't a bug, it's the whole damn plan. Turning hope into a weapon in the heart of this land. But we can guard our borders without losing dignity. We can choose the road of mercy over cold strategy. The most gruesome feature of the Trump-Vance-Miller regime is their glee in brutalizing non-white people and terrorizing anybody who objects or tries to hold them to account. Their entire rationale is that the barbarity and savagery are, quote, necessary, end quote, to deal with millions of, quote, illegals, end quote. Denmark is onto something that could blow up their entire excuse for this violence against both people and our Constitution. And Democrats need to pay attention. Back in June 2008, I did my radio program for a week in the studios of Danish radio in Copenhagen. They let me hire one of their producers, and I asked her to book a prominent Danish conservatives, at least one a day, and she pulled it off. I used to regularly debate conservatives when they started refusing to come on my show over the past decade. Several were prominent politicians, a few were well-known commentators, and one was the publisher of a major Danish newspaper. All identified themselves as conservatives, and a few even referred to themselves as, quote, a right-winger, end quote. I asked everyone a similar set of questions, and the answers I got were consistently pretty much the same. It went sort of like this. Question. So, you're a Danish conservative. Does that mean that you want to do away with unions representing about 80% of the labor market, resulting in a roughly U.S. $18 an hour functional minimum wage? End quote. Answer. Quote, no, of course not. Conservatives don't want people to live in poverty, and they have a right to representation to balance the power of giant corporations, end quote. Question. So you must want to do away with free college and the roughly $1,000 stipend Danish college students get every month for living expenses? End quote. Answer. Why would we want to destroy the country's intellectual infrastructure? We conservatives value education, end quote. Question. So, if you're a conservative, you must want to do away with your single-payer Medical for all healthcare system that's free for all residents, has no premiums, free doctor visits and hospital stays, and has very tiny copays for dental and drugs, end quote. Answer. What are you, nuts? I don't want to sit next to a sick person in a restaurant or on the bus. Healthcare is a human right that true conservatives have always embraced, end quote. Question. Do you, like conservatives in America, want to do away with environmental protections and the move toward green energy, end quote? Answer. Who would be stupid enough to want to do that? We conservatives are at the forefront of environmental protections and building our renewable energy, end quote. Question. So, other than wanting to slightly lower taxes and support the Danish monarchy, what makes you a conservative here in Denmark? End quote. Answer. I want the immigrants to leave. Denmark should be for Danes, and Danes only, end quote. That was 17 years ago, and the Danish conservatives largely got their way in the years since. In fact, they've been joined by Danish moderates and even Danish progressives in embracing what here in America we'd call comprehensive immigration reform. The New York Times reports that particularly since the 2015 influx of Syrian refugees into Europe, quote, the Danish government has enacted policies to make life challenging for asylum seekers, rather trying to discourage them from coming, end quote. For some, it's simple racism, but for most Danes, particularly those on the left, the changes in Danish law and policy just reflect the simple reality that no country can quickly absorb large numbers of immigrants without social and political disruption. Immigration and accepting refugees is fine, in other words, but only in numbers that allow for successful integration into society. Social scientists have found that when these thresholds are exceeded, the result is a loss of social cohesion, a rise in racism and bigotry, and political chaos that can even threaten democracy. The embrace across the Danish political spectrum of rational immigration limits and polite, nonviolent expulsion of undocumented immigrants has not just stabilized the political system in that country. By joining hands with conservatives, it's also strengthened the power and influence of the center-left and progressive parties and politicians. Left-leaning political parties across Europe are taking notice, and several are actively imitating or emulating Danish policies. The result is a universal loss of support for radical right-wing parties that have mainly focused on hating on immigrants, and a rise of centrist and progressive parties, politicians, and policy successes. Democrats here should be paying attention, as I've argued for years, including in my 2010 book, quote, Rebooting the American Dream, end quote, which Senator Bernie Sanders delivered to all 99 of his colleagues with a personal note and then read from on the floor of the Senate during his famous filibuster. The chapter titled, quote, Put Lou Dobbs Out to Pasture, end quote, basically argues the Danish politician. We need immigration, but to avoid disruptions to labor and society, it should be well regulated. Opposition to immigrants was where Donald Trump kicked off his 2016 presidential campaign. It's the one consistent issue where Republicans beat Democrats in the poll, typically by double digits. Failing to address uncontrolled immigration also endangers our democracy. Viktor Orban, for example, rose to power in Hungary by railing against immigrants and has since used the issue as an excuse to create a secret police force, shut down media outlets, pass draconian, quote, anti-immigration crime, end quote, laws that outlaw dissent, and pack the legislature and judiciary. Trump, it appears, has similar plans for America, but there is a reasonable solution that would take the wind out of his sails. In early 2024, Oklahoma Republican Senator James Lankford, a guy who's about as close to a Goldwater conservative as you can get, and progressive Connecticut Democratic Senator Chris Murphy introduced a bipartisan bill that would largely accomplish here in America what Denmark and other European countries are doing now. It would have limited immigration, tightened asylum criteria, funded deportations of actual criminal immigrants, pushed employers to hire people without legal status, and given President Biden, the legal authority to close the southern border. It had widespread support among members of both parties in the House and Senate and was sailing toward passage. But because the bill would have neutralized the immigration issue as a political weapon, both parties openly supported, and it was written by a conservative Republican and a progressive Democrat. Donald Trump, then the leading Republican candidate for the 2024 presidential nomination, ordered his MAGA followers in Congress to kill it. Enough Republicans bowed to Trump's demand that the legislation died, setting the stage for Trump to demagogue the immigration issue all the way up to Election Day, and then use it to justify the creation of a massive new masked police force, secret police force, largely answerable only to Trump, based on the excuse that immigration was, quote, out of control, end quote. The last U.S. immigration policies were significantly reformed was during the Reagan presidency, when he signed legislation that gave amnesty to about 3 million people and tightened up our southern border. A 21st century reform is long overdue. Congress needs to step up and revisit the Lankford-Murphy bill to stop the brutality Trump's ICE and Customs and Border Patrol officers are inflicting on our nation and bring sanity to our immigration policies. It'd not only be a good thing for the Democratic Party and the Republicans in the next year's midterms, it would help rescue American democracy from the racist demagogues Trump and Miller have unleashed and empowered. Let your member of Congress know you support comprehensive immigration reform. Now! The issue, after all, is bipartisan, and it's high time to end the brutality. The switchboard number for Congress is 202-224-3121.